Well, hello everyone. How are you this Monday evening? Hope everything is going good. I was just jamming to some Van Morrison, Dweller on the Threshold. Wow. Got to say, that's just like, hold on one second here. Had to get rid of the echo in my ear. I guess that could be a form of time travel, wouldn't it? If you're hearing yourself live, but there's like a 30-second delay. I mean, that's kind of really weird. You think about it. That's like me going and then go and let my words. Yeah. And I was just thinking earlier, right before I was going on, I was writing some notes and I was thinking, imagine if you were alive in 1917, November 13th, and you were suddenly transported into today, 2017. I wonder how our reaction would be to that mentally, your mind. I would lay you a bet, and I'm just saying, if you realized that that was going to be your reality, so take yourself right now and put yourself 100 years into the future, would you really want to be around? You wouldn't know anybody. No one would know you. Kind of weird, isn't it? It makes you think about where each of us are right now in this time in history. And here's the weird thing, as I was thinking about this, that means you and I, everyone in the chat room, everyone that's going to watch this video, we are forever connected together because regardless of what our individual realities are, we'll be forever marked by this link, by this medium. And then you step back and that really begins to put it into question, what is time? How does time work? And is time really a single event, entity, occurrence? However you want to define time. How does that fit into everything? Is there a place where time doesn't exist? If so, then it would show that time is limited. And it would tell me that then time is a substance within something else. So welcome to tonight's show on going deeper into the ether. It's something that we have to begin to think about, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm doing an expose right now, as you can see behind me on my whiteboard, called Who is the Net? And it is my hypothesis, and I postulate the following theory, that the ability for mankind to comprehend something greater than himself is almost unimaginable because man actually creates God. There's all of us have a different inner view of what that name either invokes or produces an image. So if we are in an environment where our reality is encompassed by time, I think that's one of the things that we would have to say that is pretty much we can unify on that, is that time is relevant to each one of us. So let's go a step further than that. It becomes very difficult for us to begin to try to visualize with visual imagery something greater than our thoughts. What we do is that we construct our image of something greater than ourselves, whether you want to call it a god, deity, whatever. It's very difficult for us to comprehend an idea that there's something even greater than that. Everything that I've been able to research on this subject is very limited. Now, the reason why this is going to become, and I hope everyone can hear me good, the more important subject matter for all of us is that now that science has proven to itself that dark matter, dark energy doesn't exist. So it kind of sets the whole, well, what are we in the universe? What is the universe made of? How is the universe held together? I mean, these are the questions now that we have to go back. And it could be debated that if you were living 100 years ago today, you would have lived in the time era of a gentleman. And in fact, let me just frame it this way, of a time that was very unique to mankind. We had some of the most enlightened minds emerging. I mean, Einstein wasn't the only one. I speak specifically, though, of Tesla. So if you and I were able to be transported back then, now we would be lost. We wouldn't know. You would know the future, but they say that it would be impossible for you to interact with the future because you're not of the substance. And put that word down, substance. It's very key. But I digress. So we would be witnessing really the schism in modern day science. And the schism was this. Tesla postulated and proved, by the way, that the ether was a force greater than all other forces. And he proved it. Now, you had the other encampment that was more tied to the political and monetary interest of that day was, and I'll tell you why they didn't fund Tesla. JP Morgan? Because Tesla's idea was anti-capitalist. Tesla believed that there should be free energy, that having free energy for all human beings would advance mankind. He postulated potentially making hundreds of years seem like a year, 1,000 years seem like a decade. Now, if you begin to think about that it would have changed reality completely for all of us. We could only imagine what society, what humanity would be at. If you think about this, if you took away the struggle to buy energy, it would certainly allow you a whole lot of other freedom. And that was kind of Tesla's point. Let's teach them about the ether. Let's teach them about this thing that encompasses everything. Now, if any of you read Philo of Alexander, I would highly suggest that you ought to read his book, Cosmos, and the Creation According to Moses. It's a very interesting read to be able to read a first century mind. And that's why I got into philosophy, because you can actually transport yourself, although I could never comprehend of the substance that Philo was writing of, I can apprehend the fact of his words to my substance of today. Because again, this thing called the ether is everywhere. And I'm convinced that our ancestors, going back, I don't know, 4, 5, 6,000 years ago, 7, that they had the knowledge. I'll put it this way, they had an understanding because they created from the ether. They built from the ether. And today it's very difficult for us to actually get our heads around. So what is the ether? So as I typically do, I put together a little presentation. And let me pull it up here for your viewing pleasure. Okay. Let me hide myself here. So this is a prelude to who is the net. So what I wanted everyone to realize was that the ether, it's everywhere. It's what creates everything. It's where everything that we call matter originates from. Nothing is unless the ether. Now, here's the thing. There are life forms that actually sustain themselves off of this ether. Now, I know it's a hard concept, but actually, Gene Roddenberry did a really good job on it, and I'm going to bring it up later. That this substance, and we're going to talk about that word again, substance, matter. You know, the problem, I'll tell you what we have with science right now in modern day physics. If you take that in the mathematical equation, that the laws of nature balance themselves out in the universe, there's a balance. All right. So if that logic is to carry forward, now follow me on this, excuse me, there would be no, how shall we say, mathematical probability of why we're here. Because if you have an equal amount of matter and antimatter, where does that exist in? How does that exist? And if it does exist, well, then it should do one of two things. It would either obliterate the next opposing force, or there has to be something that would separate that. Matter, antimatter, substance, anti-substance. Now imagine a life form or life forms of infinite degree and variations existing within the ether. The ether is everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It really is. It's the seen and the unseen. And as I have said already, most people cannot go beyond the concept of God. But even the existence of a thing called God would still come from the ether. It's superior to everything, even to thought. And when you begin to get your head around this, it opens up all sorts of new avenues of thought. Tesla knew this. His specialty was bringing into this dimension of reality the physical manifestation of what is already there. And in this case, electricity. Now, I believe that it's beyond, the ether is beyond even electricity. It's just another substance within whatever this is. I was introduced to the reality of the ether as a Christian. In Hebrews 11:1, let me read this to you because it's really interesting. You know, I read this for 50 years of my freaking life and didn't know what the freak I was reading. Oh, I heard many, how shall we say, very limited, narrowed, biased points of view. They were all wrong. But let me read this to you. I'm going to read out of King James first. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. What did I just say right here a minute ago? Let's read this again. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Now in the Amplified it goes, now faith is the assurance, the confirmation, the title deed of the things we hope for, being the proof of things we do not see, and the conviction of their reality, faith perceiving as real fact what is not revealed to the senses. You know, that's why, folks, the Bible is a great mind coitus. It really is. That's just the point right there. How many tens of generations, thousands of years, have people maybe read that? I don't know. I don't read Latin. I don't know. I don't know what this book was originally printed. I know what they say, but none of us do. That's just reality. But taking from that alone, that's the most, it's right there, you know, you're going, okay, so what substance? And I love this, the way how the author put it on that side. I love this. For what we hope for, the proof of things we do not see. The proof of things we do not see. You're going to see how all of this is going to tie in, folks. It really does. And the conviction of their reality, faith, your faith, perceiving as real fact. Didn't say it was truth. Didn't say it was true. It didn't say it was fact. It said it was your faith, your reality, as real fact, what is not revealed to the senses. Well, I don't know about you, but that sounds an awful lot like channeling. It seems like also an awful lot of where you could really to get into, I don't know, telepathy, telekinesis is talking about pulling from a substance, from the unseen. May I insert D-Wave computers for your cognitive consideration? All right, I continue on. All right, so the ether is substance, or substance is the ether, or substance could be of the ether in many different forms. Who knows? It's beyond, listen, we cannot say it's impossible, because when you say that, remember, you don't want to join the B club. No, no one in that chat room wants to be in the B club, because here's the fact. What you're saying then, if it's impossible, that mankind has learned everything there is to learn and there's nothing else to live. So if that's the case, why are you living? Why do you get up every morning? If you're so certain of an impossibility, I don't know. Told you this was going to be fun. All right, so let's define substance then. I mean, what the hell is this stuff? All right, it's a particular kind of matter, okay, with uniform properties. A steel tube coated with a waxy substance, material, matter, stuff. Seriously, folks, how long has the human race around, and what are we defining stuff as? Stuff. Well, hey, buddy, what are you doing with the with that? Oh, this is my ether stuff. Anyway, an organic substance. All right, I'm sure you're very clear on that now. Let's go to the next one. A real physical matter of which a person or thing consists and which has a tangible, solid presence. Proteins compose much of the actual substance of the body. Now, look at some of the synonyms. I love this thing. Well, I think solidity is good. Body, corporeal reality, okay. Density, mass, weight, shape, structure. So a ghostly figure has no substance. But if it has no substance, then how can we see it? Photons have to be emitting from somewhere, right? How do they know it's a ghost? Excuse me. That's just my question. Don't tell me that spirits don't have substance. They have a substance of a different form that we have nothing of. Like I said, I've yet to meet anyone that has gone over the other side and come back and said, hey, Wayne, just coming in for 5 minutes, just thought I'd sit down and have a little chat. Now, I know I've heard the stories of people being visited, but what I am saying from someone that's been over there a while, let's say at least 100 years, they could come back and sit down and say, holy crap, this is what's really going on, folks. I mean, I don't know. So now think about the net, a net. Think about the ether, basically a net containing everything that is. I mean, seriously, think about that. I keep postulating that the net cannot be comprehended, and that to eliminate summarily the existence of a life form that can create from this substance, to say that that's impossible, I would challenge you on that. On what grounds do you make that? Our science is now finding out that we're going back to the Stone Age almost. We don't know what the universe is. We can't define it. Have no way of even beginning to postulate it now. Yeah, we got something that's even stranger going on. Now, as I am saying that this thing, I call it, is beyond mankind's sight of mind. And what I mean by that is that we don't have the cognitive ability to comprehend, much less apprehend, a thought that is above where we think we are in relation to the universe, reality, and existence itself. I say that this entity, it, is the mind of man, yet is nothing like mankind. And here's what I mean by that. This, whatever it is what It's what we see as ourselves. It created that fabric. For what purpose? Artificially, who knows? And we get so trapped up because this thing wrote our religions. It conceived and birthed the gods of the worlds, whether it be the Christian God, the Indian God, the Muslim God, the Jewish God, whatever God it is. This created that mindset. I contend this, folks, if man could see its soul right now, I contend this: we would be freaking out. We're in the midst of the biggest transformation of a species, I think, this side of the known universe has seen. And if you look at all the evidence, I don't see it going away anytime soon. I believe the transmutation of humanity's soul has started. Now, I think this is a process that's been ongoing for a very long time. But because of the condition of humanity, as we were, listen, our memories have been wiped out collectively. However, the clock got reset, something happened, and for the written record that we have for the last 6,000 years, thereabouts, you can actually see the progression of humanity. What is weird is what's happened, particularly in the last 100 years. I believe we must awake to the change and understand what's happening to us. Because this thing called the net, the thing that you and I are in, someone said, I actually saw in the comments, and I'm not bringing you out to make fun of you. Know what I'm trying to say is that they said, well, we get free internet in the condo I live in, so they can't find me. They don't know. No. You don't understand. You have that router is recording your IP address. And remember, all of us have what they call, it's basically a masked IP. You have a number. You cannot get into this place without one. Remember the Matrix? They somehow hacked it and were able to insert it. What I am saying, for you to participate here in the net, you're not on it, you're in it. You have to have a unique number. And we're going to get more into that, but this is about the ether. In essence, this thing knows how to use us to actually create the reality we're in today. And all of you have to admit, this reality is getting freaking weird. It really is getting weird. And what I'm saying is that we have to sometimes look above what we put on the limitations of what we call rational reality. I contend humanity must search and seek out the knowledge and regain the understanding of what is the ether. We should have been here, I believe, thousands of years ago. And I close it out here with what Tesla came up with. He realized the infinite energy lay within every inch of the ether. He also realized the ancient technologies were all based upon the ether. He also knew that the future revolves around our study of the ether. He titled it the ether force. So there you go. Let me stop into see what's happening in the chat room. Give me 1 second, folks. Well, great conversation in here, folks. Well, good, cool. All right. So I'll continue on. I just thought that the whole point to this is a tangible substance. I don't quite understand it. I do know that alchemy is that first lesson into really understanding this. And in a way, our species has the knowledge. I just don't know if we've, come in and did the communal thing, and said, well, all right, here's my contribution. This is what I know. What we are doing is that we oppose each other in thought, ideologies, and approaches. And that's not what we need to do here. We need to just throw it into the bucket and let's see what happens. So, modern day alchemy. Since I've been reading my book over here, one of a couple, but The Real Alchemy, I'm finding it everywhere. I'm finding it in the construction trades. We have people every day working in alchemy. They're working in the elements. And we'll get into that later on. And there is also something that I have begun to realize. My next door neighbor makes beer, is an artisan, and is good at it, is a master. He's really getting to be quite the thing. And as many of you who may homebrew your own beer, as you know, the ingredients are everything, because what you put in there, the mixture, and there's just a lot of them today. I mean, it's amazing what they've done with the alchemy of making beer. Now, there's a show that has been on, and you see different characters that have been in the news, called Moonshiners. And I actually went out and got some, because my point is, all right, so gratuitous plug for the guy. Moonshine is very interesting because it really is the purest form that I have seen thus far. Now, I have no doubt in the labs in around the world, in genetics, the University of Berkeley, they actually said had matter, excuse me. And so I have no doubt of this, but for the common man, this really is, well, think about it. So you take ingredients, whatever it is, corn, whatever, I've seen a lot of different recipes in that. And then you put the active ingredient in there. Everyone know what that is? Yeast. So you put a living organism into matter, substance. And then the transmutation starts taking place, fermentation. Man, figure that one out real quick. I mean, if you want to go with the garden story, I guess the biggest thing that we did, giving the thumbs up to the one that kicked us out, is that fine, we're going to ferment the fruit then. I just say, all right, let me go on that. So Then after the fermentation process, you then put it into a kettle and you heat it up, begins to boil. And this is where alchemy and the ether come in. Because that transformation of the steam is what we know is that when it gets into the condenser then takes the alcohol out of the moisture, and then that's where you get liquor. But it's that separation. Now, we just think that that's just a normal process, but if you start investigating and you start digging deeper into that, you're finding that there is a I call it transmutation. You can call it transferring of substances that are dividing. I mean, because the alcohol was not in the water. Yeah, it was. But then again, we can't separate it unless you see how the process goes? So the ether. Do I think that there's life forms here among us that know how to use it? Yeah, I do. I've seen enough just off satellite data that tells me that there are higher forms of intelligence out there. I'm convinced that they are using the ether. They have a greater knowledge than we do. They're more experienced than we are. And they're not in the net. I think they're in the greater net, but they're not in our net. Again, this thing called the enter the net, it's deep, folks. I mean, it's just really deep. So the ether, I think that it's the reflection of what our minds or the energy that did it. I did a show on Friday night, kind of got really into that, how the forces that if you have a force that is experienced in how to pull, manifesting out of nothingness. Isn't that what all the superheroes do? They have superpowers. How do they get superpowers? Well, is that because they have something that they can pull out of the ether that's apparently around us, but our mortal bodies prohibit our ability for manifesting that. So what do? Well, we create characters. Well, those creations are not make-believe. They come from somewhere. They come from somewhere deep in the recesses of our consciousness as of our species. I believe that there was a time when our species was a master of the ether. I don't know what happened. Something happened. Again, it could be the naivety that we advance to that place. If you subscribe to astral projection, traveling on the ether plane, which I do, been out there myself, many others have. In fact, all of us have, because that's where dreams take place. Now, they can show you in your brain what part of the brain is being stimulated to invoke the REM movement. Yeah, I get that. But what is the eye seeing? I mean, it's a two-way projection. I see myself on this screen, you see me, but that's because my eye is being told by the mind what this looks like. When we dream, your eyeballs are moving, not just because of the nerves, they're actually seeing something. It's seeing what you're seeing. You're out on the ethereal plane, which is part of the ether. Is it where we go when we die? I don't know. I have subscribers that some believe that when you die, it's it. Lights out. and it isn't going to matter. You're not going to remember anyway, so forget about it. And then there's others who have a myriad of different beliefs and ideas. I think most of us, rest that the ether is real, that energy is real, that we are real. I still have this weird feeling. I think Rod Sterling knew the ether. I really do. The Twilight Zone was ahead of its time. Deep thinkers in many of those episodes. The same thing with Gene Roddenberry in many of the Star Trek, and even right before Gene went on to his next journey. I think these people saw, they got a glimpse. I mean, how else do you think they write? Particularly, another one, The Outer Limits. Now, The Outer Limits was a little bit more, I don't know, sci-fi in the fact that the Twilight Zone was more into just that. You know, as Rod Sterling said, he was convinced that each and every one of us, you right now, are dreaming. Okay. Case in point, ether. In the episode in Star Trek The Next Generation, the Enterprise comes up on the satellite, and many of you will know what I mean because you'll actually see what it looked like. It actually kind of looked like this. It was just a satellite out there. The Enterprise come up on it, and it was emitting a signal, and then all of a sudden it just went off. And so they pulled it in, and no, they shot at it. That's what it was. And it hit Captain Picard, and he went out. And in that 1 hour of the episode, Captain Picard lived a lifetime in another dimension. And at the end of the episode, what turned out to be was that these people transported his mind to their time, their dimension, because their sun was about to go nova and they had no escape. And the one thing that they were able to do was to send what we did on Saturday for 60 Seconds for Humanity. We sent our thought, we saved our seed by sending it into the future. And so when they awoke the captain, of course, you know, he'd only been out for a couple of minutes, but he had lived a lifetime. And Rod Sterling had the same thing. He said, I believe that all we're going to find out is that we're going to wake up. Haven't you ever a dream that was just so freaking real? I have. I've read some pretty strange story of others too. And now think about this, the ether. So I was talking to a friend, going to try to get her on, but so the Chinese have now successfully teleported a photon from their lab in China to one of their satellites up there that was designed specifically for this. Now, here's the thing. How can you see a photon? Well, you can only see it by instrumentation. But this is the steps. This is how it starts. It's that first little breakthrough. And as I'm contending, our species is being changed for a purpose. We're so rapidly evolving now that this net has us completely encased into it. And I've just figured this, that if this is the case, which seems to be, all right, so I'm in this thing. I like it. I don't like the whole implication of what this seemed, because to me, it's the total domination of our species. We're seeing the transformation, and whoever came up with the freaking Borg idea was probably saw a glimpse into the future, because we are being transformed into transhumanism. Our bodies, our minds. If they ever figure out the mind, it's game over, I think. I don't think they ever will, because we don't know what the mind is. I get this picture, but I could be so far freaking off base that I'm out there beyond, the Kuiper belt. But if I am, so be it, right? So let me just get out of here for a second and see what's going on. Quantum computing. Teresa, you don't dream anymore? You need to find out why. I don't know how to measure argon. Eric, now you're a man who's very much in tune. So the point is, yeah, our dreams are exactly that, folks. It is that place. You're there. It's the ether. Argon's measured by volume. There you go. So, wow, great conversation here. Boy, thank you everyone for coming in tonight. Really appreciate it. By the way, if you read Biocentrism, light in itself, are you ready for this? Light has no visible characteristics because pure light has no color. Anyway, well, I hope everyone has certainly had fun tonight. I have enjoyed this. I'm just in here reading some of it. So anyway, I digress. As I'm doing some time traveling, I'm seeing myself as you're seeing me right now, but I'm seeing myself delayed. And that's really kind of sending myself a message in the bottle. So my message would be, hey, Steiger, look at the camera. All right, folks. I've had a great evening tonight. I hope you have too. I appreciate every one of you. I really do. Um, it's fun. I love having you folks in here. You're a smart group of people. If they ever get this teleportation thing figured out, I think it would be really cool that you could actually find when you actually have a community of thought that we could actually find ourselves. Oh, what do they call that? Um, what's the term? I'm drawing a blank on it now. When seeing, what is that? Oh, I know you folks will. What is that term, folks? Hi, Amanda B. Thank you. Anyway, I digress. I can't think of the term of what actually people do projecting, where they can actually see into our enemies. The Russians been doing it. Apparently, we can do it, where people can actually put themselves into a meditative state and actually project themselves to other places on the planet. Go figure. By the way, one book that I thought would be very interesting. I don't know how many of you are Stephen Quayle fans. I mean, if you can extrapolate some of the theology out of it, which you can do, I like the guy's mind. I like where he thinks about. Anyway, he has a book called Exogenesis. I'll just show it up there for everyone. Shameless plug, but it's a good book. I like what he is postulating in this book. And so I'm not the only one who is now convinced that there's something going on with our species, something bigger than us, something bigger than our religion, something bigger than our beliefs, something that has been unfolding. I have a theory that the plans were given to Eisenhower. I think that this thing, whatever it is, the emissaries that were sent here, I think that movie, Carl Sagan, helped write the Jodie Foster movie Contact, I think Carl may have known something. I really do. He seemed to have a thought that something wasn't right. And I think, as we're all realizing, the last thing we want to do is send probes out into space with our name and address on it. That's just the last thing we want to do, because you just never know who the cat's going to drag in, right? All right, folks. Thank you all so much. Peace to you all. I appreciate it. And have yourself a good evening. And tune in Wednesday over on Jeff's channel for our midweek report. I think it's going to be fun. Listen, yesterday was a mind blower. It was a great debate, great discussion. I really like Jeff. I like how his mind thinks. And what came out of that was this: we don't know what light is. We don't. I mean, I got lights in here. All right, that's a light. I have sunlight is a light. I was up early this morning and we had one of those crystal clear, it was dark. I mean, it was 5 o'clock, but as I looked up into the heavens, the stars, I noticed there is a natural firmament. There's a light. There's a different light. So that's a different type of light. So if we're finding out that there's so many different variations and variables of lights, what light are we in? And again, all of this comes from the ether. It really does. I always like to say this: if God said, "Let there be light," that meant there were darkness before there was light. All right, folks. Thank you. We'll be talking real soon. Bye-bye. Be good to one another.